The stairs led upward, but gravity pulled her down. At first it felt like a mild incline in the wrong direction, the way a ship's deck subtly tilts before the wave announces itself. Her foot lifted for the next step and landed heavier than expected, soul-slapping stone with a sound too loud for the narrow shaft. The staircase spiraled upward in a tight corkscrew, walls close enough that her shoulders nearly brushed them. The air was stale, tasting faintly of mineral dust and something older, a dry cold that pressed against her lungs. She paused, hand on the inner rail. The metal was cold, colder than the surrounding stone should have allowed, and it hummed faintly beneath her palm. Not vibrating, listening. She took another step. The pull strengthened. It wasn't a yank or a sudden lurch. It was a steady insistence, a downward persuasion that leaned into her calves and hips, turning her muscles sluggish. Her boots scuffed as if the steps were greased. She leaned forward, breath fogging in the dim light, and felt the pressure increase in response, like the stairs resented her defiance. The architecture was wrong in ways she couldn't immediately name. Each step was the same height, yet her stride never quite matched them. The curve of the wall seemed to bend inward and outward at once. The stone blocks subtly skewed so their seams never aligned from one step to the next. The ceiling hung low, then abruptly rose just out of reach, forcing her to crane her neck and sending a slow roll of vertigo through her skull. A sound drifted up from below, a deep, settling creak, as if the structure were shifting its weight. It echoed strangely, not bouncing back but stretching, thinning into a distant sigh that faded into nothing. She swallowed and continued. With each step upward, the force pulling her down grew denser, less like gravity and more like pressure. Her thighs burned. Her breath came shallow. She imagined invisible hands pressing on her shoulders, a careful, patient push. The sensation was intimate, almost gentle, and that frightened her more than any sudden violence could have. She told herself it was fatigue, lack of sleep, the enclosed space playing tricks on her senses. Yet when she stopped and tried to stand upright, she felt herself tilt backward, center of mass sliding toward the lower steps. She grabbed the rail with both hands. The metal hummed again, louder now, a low note that resonated in her bones. The light above flickered. It wasn't a bulb or a torch. There was no visible source, just a diffuse glow that seemed to seep from the stone itself. It pulsed once, twice, then steadied, casting shadows that slanted at impossible angles. Her shadow stretched downward along the steps, elongated and distorted, its head bowed as if in prayer. She climbed. The stairs narrowed. The curve tightened until each step demanded careful placement. Her boots scraped and slipped, rubber protesting against the stone. Sweat prickled along her spine despite the cold, trickling downward, pulled insistently toward the lower dark. The sound of her breathing filled the space, loud and ragged, accompanied by the soft grind of stone against stone somewhere within the walls. Halfway up, if halfway meant anything here, the pull became undeniable, pressed into her chest, compressing her lungs. Each inhalation felt borrowed, each exhalation stolen. She leaned forward at an unnatural angle, almost crawling, fingers digging into the grooves worn into the steps by something that had climbed here before, or fallen. A whisper brushed her ears. Not a voice, not words. More like the sound of movement heard through thick walls. The sense of being observed sharpened, coalescing into a point just behind her left shoulder. She did not turn. The pressure increased when she considered it, as if the stairs anticipated her thoughts. She remembered staircases from her childhood, the way gravity always felt different going up, the weight in her legs, the small triumph at the top. This was not that. This was negotiation. Each step was a question, and the answer was always no. The walls began to tilt, not visibly, not in a way she could point to, but her inner ear screamed betrayal. The steps ahead appeared to rise, yet her body insisted they were falling away. Her hands slipped on the rail, skin burning as she tightened her grip. The hum deepened, resolving into a rhythm that matched the pounding of her heart. She slipped. For a breathless moment she hung between steps, muscles screaming, boots skidding. The pull surged, delighted, eager. She slammed her knee into the stone, pain flaring white-hot, and clung there, cheek pressed to the cold step. The stone was warmer here, almost skin-warm, and she recoiled despite herself. A sound rose from below. Not a creak this time, but a layered echo, as if many feet shifted at once. The steps beneath her seemed to flex, imperceptibly, accommodating weight that was not hers. She crawled upward. Her movements were slow, deliberate, every inch earned. The pressure grew so strong she felt it in her teeth, a dull ache that vibrated through her jaw. Her vision tunneled. The glow ahead dimmed, then flared, revealing a landing just beyond the curve. A flat stretch of stone, an end. Hope flared, thin and sharp. The stairs reacted immediately. The downward force intensified, slamming into her like a wall. Her elbows buckled. She slid back a step, then another, scraping skin, breath tearing from her throat. She screamed, the sound ripped away and swallowed by the space. The walls drank it in, the echo returning wrong, delayed, as if someone else screamed back from far below. She lay there, panting, cheek pressed to the stone, tears pulled from her eyes and streaming downward. The presence was undeniable now. It wasn't behind her or below. It was the staircase itself. The steps, the walls, the curve, all part of a single patient intention. She understood then that the force was not pushing her down. It was inviting her to belong. The realization settled heavy and calm in her chest. The pressure eased slightly, not out of mercy but reassurance. She felt the stairs adjust beneath her, subtle shifts aligning her body with their preferred direction. When she let go of the rail, she did not fall. She was guided. She rolled onto her back. The ceiling above seemed closer now, stone bending inward like a closing fist. Her shadow clung to the steps below, no longer stretched but rooted, fingers splayed, gripping the edges. It did not move when she did. The hum softened into a lullaby, the rhythm of a structure at rest. The air grew thicker, easier to breathe as she stopped resisting. She slid downward, slowly, smoothly, each step a gentle descent. The glow followed her, cradling her in its dim warmth. As she passed the place where she had slipped, she saw the grooves in the stone more clearly. They were not handholds. They were impressions, bodies pressed long and hard enough to leave their shape behind. At the bottom, there was no door, no floor, only a continuation of steps curving away into dark. She understood that there had never been an upward direction here, only the illusion of it. The staircase was not a passage but a throat, and gravity was its swallow. The last thing she felt before the light faded was the certainty of weightlessness, not from escape, but from finally being held exactly where she belonged. The walls whispered in a language she almost understood. At first she thought it was airflow. Old buildings breathed like that, she told herself. A soft, persistent hush that moved along the corridors without any clear direction. The underground archive lay far beneath the surface, a buried annex forgotten by budgets and maps, its entrance disguised behind a service door that no longer appeared on official plans. The stairwell down had smelled of rust and wet paper. Down here, the air was colder, thicker, carrying the mineral scent of stone and something faintly organic, like damp linen left too long in the dark. Her flashlight beam slid across the walls. They were not uniform. Aged stone gave way to layered plaster, then back again, seams running through them like healed fractures. In places the plaster had been applied unevenly, rippling in shallow waves, as if pressed by hands that lingered too long. She traced one seam with her eyes and felt, inexplicably, that it recoiled when she looked directly at it. The whispering grew clearer when she stopped walking. It wasn't sound as she usually understood it. No consonants, no vowels. It was a textured murmur, like fabric brushed together, like breath through teeth. The rhythm was irregular but deliberate, swelling and thinning as if shaped by intention. When she turned her head, it didn't get louder in one ear or the other. It existed everywhere at once, embedded in the space itself. Her shoulders tightened. The cold pressed in, finding the gaps in her clothing, the thin skin at her wrists and throat. She exhaled slowly, fog blooming in front of her face, and felt the walls respond. The whisper shifted, matching her breath for a moment too long before continuing on its own. She moved deeper. The corridors were narrow but not claustrophobic, widening subtly when she felt the urge to turn back, narrowing again once she committed to forward motion. Shelving units lined the walls, some metal, some wood, many empty, others sagging under the weight of boxes and ledgers swollen with age. Labels had faded to illegibility. Dates, names, diagnoses perhaps, all dissolved into gray smudges. The whispers brushed closer. Not louder, closer. She felt them along her scalp, across the soft cartilage of her ears, like fingers testing for warmth. A pressure built behind her eyes, not painful, just insistent. Images flickered at the edges of her thoughts. A childhood hallway lit by a single night light, the smell of antiseptic, the sound of her name spoken gently by someone she could no longer picture. She stopped again. Her heart thudded, heavy and slow. Each beat echoed faintly by the walls. The whispering gathered, coalescing into patterns. She recognized the cadence before she recognized the meaning. It was the rhythm of reassurance, of explanations given slowly to someone frightened. The tone her mother used when storms rattled the windows. The tone doctors used when they said everything would be fine. Her throat tightened. "Who's there?" she asked, and the sound of her voice startled her with its smallness. The walls answered by changing. Not overtly, no cracks splitting open, no dramatic movement. But the seams realigned. Layers of plaster that had been offset now met cleanly. The stone blocks settled, their edges smoothing. The whisper gained a new texture, warmer, almost pleased. She felt a pull, not physical, not yet, but emotional, a sense of being expected. The corridor ahead curved gently, disappearing into shadow. She followed without consciously deciding to, her steps syncing with the whisper's rhythm. The floor sloped downward at an angle just shallow enough that she noticed only after several minutes, when the air grew colder and the smell shifted to something medicinal, sharp beneath the damp. This section of the archive had been something else once. The walls here were plastered entirely, thickly layered, bearing faint impressions like palimpsests. Doorways opened on either side, some bricked over, others yawning dark. Inside one, her flashlight revealed iron bed frames bolted to the floor, leather straps hanging loose, stiff with age. The whispering intensified, threading through the room, brushing against the metal, sliding along the straps. Her skin prickled. Her body reacted before her mind did. Shoulders hunched, breath shallow, muscles taut as wire. The whispers pressed closer, no longer content to surround her. They slipped inward, brushing against memory. She smelled boiled vegetables and disinfectant, heard the squeak of rubber soles on linoleum, felt the weight of being watched through a narrow window in a door. "I don't remember this," she whispered, though uncertainty crept into the words. The walls disagreed gently. The language sharpened, not into words but into meanings. Comfort braided with sorrow, patience threaded with longing. She understood fragments now, not intellectually but viscerally. "We kept you safe. You were quiet here. You listened." She staggered, bracing herself against the wall. The surface was warmer than before, pliant beneath her palm, the plaster yielding a fraction of an inch as if breathing. The whisper surged at her touch, not alarmed but eager. Images flooded her, herself at different ages, sitting still, listening, absorbing, being told to rest, to stay, to let the noise outside pass by without her. The corridor ended in a circular chamber. The ceiling arched low, the walls seamless, layers of stone and plaster fused into a single continuous surface. No shelves, no doors, just a room that felt complete in a way the others had not. The whispering here was almost musical, harmonized, each texture layered over the next. In the center of the floor was a shallow depression, smooth and worn, shaped unmistakably like a human body. Understanding settled over her with terrible calm. This was not an archive of records. It was an archive of people. Of those who listened too well, who learned the language and responded. The walls did not warn. They did not threaten. They remembered and they invited. The whispering softened, opening, offering her own memories back to her. Polished and simplified. No sharp edges. No unanswered questions. Just the promise of rest, of belonging to something vast and patient and endlessly attentive. She lay down. The stone was warm. The depression fit her perfectly, every curve anticipated. As she settled, the walls leaned in, not visibly, but perceptibly, closing the space around her, sealing her in a cocoon of sound. The whispers enveloped her, no longer almost understood, but fully, intimately known. They were not saying leave. They were saying stay.